Have you ever poured every last ounce of yourself into loving someone, into holding them together when they're falling apart, only to find yourself punished for that very act of devotion? Imagine this: the sterile scent of antiseptic, the constant, quiet beep of machines, the feel of paper-thin skin under your fingertips. Imagine being the anchor for your dying mother, day after relentless day. You witness her strength fading like a watercolor left in the rain. You hold her hand through waves of pain that steal her breath. You whisper reassurances into the dark when fear grips her. You become her shadow, her advocate, her comfort. And then you walk back into the fluorescent glare of your professional life, still carrying the weight of that grief, only to be told you're distracted. That your commitment, the fierce loyalty you just proved you possess, is somehow insufficient for a spreadsheet or a marketing campaign. That's not a hypothetical. That was my reality. The whiplash between the profound, heart-wrenching reality of my mother's final months and the cold, corporate dismissal of my humanity, it's a scar I'll carry. What my boss, Tim, did next was a masterclass in callousness. I'll never, ever forget the look on his face, the detached tone in his voice. But what I did in return? Let's just say, I have a feeling he'll remember it for the rest of his life. Hi, I'm Maya. Thank you for being here, for listening. This isn't just a story about a bad boss or a tough time. It's about the collision of deep personal loss and professional expectation. It's about the immense strength it takes to navigate grief while the world demands you perform as if nothing is wrong. It's about how the cruelty of one person forced me to rediscover my own power, not through anger, but through resilience and a demand for basic human decency. If you've ever felt torn, fragmented, trying to hold together a crumbling personal life while your job expects robotic perfection, then you know this pressure. You'll understand the tightrope walk. So, let me take you back, just a few short, incredibly long months ago, to where this painful chapter began. My mom, she wasn't just my mother, she was the sun my world orbited around. Picture a woman whose default setting was a warm, crinkly-eyed smile. She had this way of making even instant coffee feel like a special occasion. She raised me entirely on her own, juggling 2, sometimes 3, waitressing and cleaning jobs. I remember her coming home late, smelling faintly of diner grease and cleaning supplies, yet always having the energy to ask about my day, to help with homework, to read me a story. We lived in a small apartment, the kind where you know all your neighbors by name. We didn't have vacations or fancy gadgets. Our wealth wasn't in dollars, it was in shared laughter over burnt toast, in late-night talks, in the unwavering certainty that we had each other's backs. She taught me resilience, not by lecturing, but by living it. She taught me kindness, not through platitudes, but through countless small actions, sharing food with a neighbor down on their luck, always having a listening ear. She was my blueprint for strength, for grace under pressure. Then came the phone call that shattered everything. I was actually at work, ironically, probably stressing over some marketing deadline. The doctor's voice on the other end was calm, professional, but the words hit like physical blows. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Advanced. Aggressive. The air left my lungs. The bustling office noise around me faded into a dull roar. All I could see was my mom's smiling face, suddenly fragile, overshadowed by this monstrous diagnosis. I rushed to her side. Seeing her, so small and scared in that sterile doctor's office. I remember clutching her hands, her knuckles surprisingly bony, and making a promise. Not just a verbal promise, but a soul-deep vow. I'll be here, Mom. Every step. We'll face this together. You won't be alone. I meant it with every fiber of my being. Nothing else mattered. Now, overlay that personal earthquake onto my professional life. I was a marketing manager at a mid-sized tech firm. Decent job, good colleagues mostly. But my direct supervisor was Tim. Think sharp suits, sharper ambition, and an emotional range that seemed limited. He valued efficiency, metrics, visible dedication, the kind measured in hours logged at the desk, not necessarily in quality of output or, heaven forbid, human experience. He wasn't overtly malicious, just corporate. Driven by targets and appearances. Still, facing this unimaginable crisis, I clung to a naive hope that basic humanity would prevail. I scheduled a meeting, explained the situation, the diagnosis, the prognosis, the need for me to be a primary caregiver. I wasn't asking for a leave of absence, not yet. I proposed a flexible schedule. Let me attend her chemo appointments, I said. Let me be there for the critical doctor's visits. I'll make up the time. I can work remotely, evenings, weekends. My commitment to my projects won't waver. I just need flexibility. To my initial relief, he put on a sympathetic face. Of course, Maya, he said, almost convincingly. Family absolutely comes first. Take the time you need. We support you. A wave of gratitude washed over me. Maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be as impossible as I feared. Oh, how wrong I was. That initial promise of support? It was about as substantial as smoke. The weeks that followed blurred into a grueling rhythm of care and code switching. Mornings started before dawn, checking on Mom, helping her with medications, sometimes just sitting with her when the nausea was too overwhelming. I learned to administer injections, manage pill schedules, clean up messes with a calm I didn't feel inside. I saw her vibrant energy replaced by a crushing fatigue. I held her hair back while the chemo ravaged her body, whispering encouragement, trying to absorb some of her pain. There were moments of quiet dignity, moments of sheer terror, moments where all we could do was hold hands and cry together. Then, the jarring shift. I'd wipe my tears, splash cold water on my face, grab my laptop, and pivot. Log into Zoom meetings, trying to sound bright and engaged while my heart felt like lead. Analyze campaign data, write reports, manage my team, respond to emails with forced professionalism. I worked from hospital waiting rooms, typing furiously during infusion sessions. I worked late into the night after Mom finally fell asleep, catching up on everything I'd missed during the day. I didn't just meet expectations, I often exceeded them, driven by a desperate need to prove I could handle it, to keep my job secure in the midst of chaos. My performance reviews during this period? Still stellar. Deadlines? All met. Campaigns? Successful. But the ground was shifting beneath me. Tim's initial support evaporated, replaced by subtle, then not so subtle, signs of impatience. It started with comments dropped casually in team meetings or Slack messages. Maya, you seem a bit tired today. Everything all right? Knowing full well what everything entailed. Then, just flagging that you joined the client call 2 minutes late. Never mind that I'd been dealing with a medical emergency moments before. Then came the loaded questions. Are you sure you have the bandwidth for this new project? And the one that stung the most, your focus, it just doesn't seem to be where it was. We need leadership that's fully present. Present? I was more present than I'd ever been, present to the raw, brutal realities of life and death, present to the needs of my dying mother, present to my work commitments despite it all. His definition of present clearly meant physically chained to a desk, devoid of messy human complications. The final blow came swiftly, impersonally. He scheduled a mandatory video call. No preamble, no small talk. Just him, his face a mask of corporate detachment, framed in his neat, sterile office background. Maya, he began, his voice flat, after careful consideration, we've decided it's best to restructure your role. We're moving you to the assistant marketing manager position, effective immediately. We feel your recent distractions indicate you're not currently demonstrating the level of leadership required for the manager role. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was like being punched in the gut. Distractions. He called my dying mother a distraction. Are you serious, Tim? The words barely came out. My voice trembled. Completely, he replied, unflinching. The team needs someone who is 100% focused on our objectives. Your personal situation, while unfortunate, is impacting your ability to lead. Impacty how? I wanted to scream. How could he be so blind, so utterly devoid of empathy? How could he look at someone stretched to their absolute limit, juggling impossible demands with grace and diligence, and see only weakness? My mind raced, trying to process the injustice, the cruelty of it. Demoted. Punished for loving my mother. Punished for being human. My shock turned into a cold, clear anger. Tim, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady, though tears were prickling behind my eyes. Can you point to one specific deadline I've missed since my mother got sick? Can you name a single campaign that has failed under my management during this time? Can you show me any metric, any tangible evidence, that my work product has suffered? Silence. He just stared back, his expression unchanging. He had no answer because there wasn't one. My performance hadn't slipped. My availability for his perception of constant, performative office presence had. That was my crime. I ended the call, the click of the button echoing in the sudden silence of my apartment, broken only by the soft sound of my mom sleeping fitfully in the next room. And then I broke. I cried harder than I had since the diagnosis. Tears of grief, yes, but also tears of rage, of disillusionment. What kind of twisted system rewards sacrificing family for spreadsheets? What kind of leadership prioritizes perceived focus over proven resilience and dedication? Isn't navigating a crisis with integrity the ultimate test of leadership? Shouldn't compassion, the very thing I was being penalized for, be considered a strength essential for managing teams, for understanding customers, for being a decent human being in the world? Apparently not in Tim's world. Apparently not in this company's culture, as embodied by him. Sitting there, amidst the wreckage of that phone call, a different feeling started to emerge beneath the pain and anger. A quiet, steely resolve. Tim thought he had broken me, pushed me aside because I was inconveniently human. He thought my grief made me weak. He was wrong. He didn't know who he was dealing with. He didn't know the strength my mother had instilled in me. He didn't know that I wasn't just going to accept this injustice. I wasn't going to fade quietly into the background. I had a plan simmering, a way to fight back. Not with his brand of cruelty, but with facts, with policy, with dignity. He wanted to teach me a lesson about commitment? Fine. I was about to teach him a lesson about consequences. And it was going to resonate far beyond a simple demotion. The next few weeks were intense. While still juggling mom's care, the endless appointments, the emotional roller coaster, the sheer physical exhaustion, I added another task to my plate, building my case. It wasn't about revenge, it felt more like channeling my grief and anger into something constructive, something that honored the fight my mother was putting up every single day. I became meticulous. I trawled through months of emails, saving every instance where Tim acknowledged my situation, every message where I explicitly stated my adjusted work hours, every project update proving I was delivering. I saved chat logs where I confirmed my availability outside standard hours. I even, feeling a tremor of anxiety but knowing it was necessary, started discreetly recording my screen during key Zoom meetings, capturing his dismissive remarks and my contributions. Every piece of data, every timestamp, every documented success became a brick in the wall of evidence I was constructing. Once I had everything compiled, a clear, undeniable record of my performance and his baseless demotion, I took the next steps. I carefully reviewed the company's HR policies, specifically sections on non-discrimination, caregiver support, and flexible work arrangements. Then I researched my rights under the Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA. Even though I hadn't taken formal leave, the protections against retaliation for caregiving responsibilities were relevant. With my evidence organized and my understanding of policy clear, I drafted a formal complaint. Calmly, factually, I laid out the sequence of events, my mother's diagnosis, my request for flexibility, Tim's initial agreement, my continued high performance, backed by evidence, his subsequent negative comments, and the unfounded demotion. I explicitly stated that I believed I was being penalized for my role as a family caregiver, which constituted discrimination and violated both company policy and potentially federal law. Then, the crucial move. I emailed this detailed complaint directly to the head of human resources. And I strategically CC'd Tim's boss, the regional director, a woman known for being tough but fair. I also, simultaneously, filed a formal inquiry with the State Department of Labor regarding potential caregiver discrimination. I hit send on both fronts, my heart pounding, but my resolve firm. The ball was no longer in Tim's court. It was in HR's, the regional directors, and the government's. Suddenly, Tim's smug certainty probably didn't feel so certain anymore. The silence that followed felt charged. I continued my work, now as an assistant manager, head held high, doing the same job but with a different title, waiting. I interacted with Tim professionally, neutrally, giving him no ammunition. I could sense a shift, a certain unease perhaps, but he didn't address the situation directly. The waiting was agonizing, another layer of stress on top of everything else. Then, about 2 weeks later, my phone rang. It wasn't HR. It wasn't Tim. It was the regional director herself. My stomach clenched. This was it. Maya, she said, her voice serious but surprisingly warm. Thank you for reaching out. I've reviewed your complaint and the documentation you provided. Frankly, I'm appalled. She didn't mince words. She acknowledged the situation was handled incredibly poorly. She apologized profusely, not a vague corporate apology, but a specific one for the stress and unfairness I had endured. She said Tim's actions did not reflect the company's values, or at least, the values they aspired to. Then came the offer, immediate reinstatement to my marketing manager position. Not just that, but a salary increase, backdated to the time of the demotion, in recognition of your resilience and continued commitment under duress, as she put it. She even thanked me for having the courage to speak up, stating it had highlighted a significant lapse in judgment within middle management that needed addressing urgently. It was complete validation. More than I had even hoped for. And Tim? The director informed me that he had been immediately removed from his supervisory role pending a full internal investigation. The grapevine, as it often does, filled in the rest later. He was officially demoted, sidelined, and within a couple of months, he was quietly separated from the company. Gone. His cruelty, his lack of empathy, had consequences he clearly never anticipated. Justice, it turned out, could be methodical and corporate too. Winning my job back, getting that raise, seeing Tim face consequences, it felt like a victory, yes. A deeply personal, hard-won victory. But this story isn't just about my individual battle. It's a snapshot of a much larger, systemic issue. How many people, right now, are reading this while juggling care for a sick parent, a child with special needs, a struggling partner? How many are sacrificing sleep, sanity, and their own well-being to meet the demands of both work and family, only to be met with suspicion, impatience, or outright penalty at their jobs? We live in a culture that often worships productivity above all else, that champions the myth of the ideal worker, someone always available, always on, unencumbered by the messy, beautiful, demanding realities of human relationships and responsibilities. Caregiving, arguably one of the most profoundly human and essential roles, is too often viewed as a liability in the professional sphere. A distraction. A deviation from the norm. Companies talk about work-life balance, but the structures, the attitudes, the unconscious biases often punish those who genuinely need it. We need to challenge this narrative. We need to recognize that empathy, compassion, resilience, the very skills honed in the crucible of caregiving, are assets, not weaknesses. They make us better leaders, better colleagues, better humans. Managing a complex family crisis requires incredible organizational skills, patience, problem-solving, advocacy. Aren't these valuable in any role? We need workplaces that offer genuine flexibility, that trust their employees, that lead with compassion, not suspicion. We need to build systems where people don't have to choose between caring for their loved ones and keeping their livelihoods. So, if you find yourself in a situation where your humanity feels like a professional handicap, where you're being made to feel guilty or inadequate for tending to the needs of those you love, remember this: your dedication is not a flaw. Your compassion is not a distraction. It is your strength. Don't let anyone diminish it. The next time a manager, a colleague, or even just the pressure of the corporate world tells you you're too distracted by life, by love, by loss, I want you to pause. Take a breath. And ask them, silently or out loud, what would you do if it were your mother, your father, your child, your partner? Because at the end of our lives, it won't be the deadlines we met or the promotions we chased that define our legacy. It will be the love we gave, the hands we held, the comfort we provided, the lives we touched with our compassion. Those are the metrics that truly matter. And to Tim, if by some chance you ever see this, I genuinely hope you learned something. Not just about HR policy or labor laws, but about leadership. Real leadership isn't about wielding power or enforcing rigid control. It's about recognizing the humanity in your team, fostering trust, and leading with empathy. It's about understanding that supporting your employees in their times of need isn't just kind, it's smart. It builds loyalty and strength you can't quantify on a spreadsheet. I hope you remember that. Thank you, truly, for letting me share my story. It hasn't been easy to revisit, but it feels important. If any part of this resonated with you, if you've walked a similar path, please share your experience in the comments below. Your story matters, your voice deserves to be heard, and knowing you're not alone can make all the difference. Please, like this video if it moved you, subscribe if you want to hear more, and share it with anyone who might need a reminder of their own strength, or anyone who needs to cultivate a little more compassion. Until next time, stay strong, stay resilient, stay kind to yourselves and others. And never, ever let anyone make you feel guilty for loving deeply. Take care.